This is my RTX 5070 Ti and today we're going to be overclocking it just to see how much more performance we could possibly gain. Not like I really needed the extra performance, but hey, let's do it anyway. It should make for a decent video. Now, a quick crash course on GPU overclocking. It's not a destructive process. You won't break your graphics card doing this. You might induce some GPU instability, but you can just dial back the clocks and your GPU will work as if you'd never overclocked it. Anyways, the program I like to use is MSI Afterburner. It's a totally free program and I think every PC gamer should install it on their rig. And to test stability, I like to run Unigine Heaven in the background as it's a looping benchmark and it allows you to grasp a decent gauge on whether your OC is stable or not. From here, I like to max out the power slider. This allows your GPU to use more power, therefore it will make any overclock slightly more stable. And then I like to go in and increase the memory first. Most NVIDIA graphics cards, especially GDDR6 or GDDR7 based ones, will easily do an extra 1000 megahertz on the memory, and that's what we did with the 5070 Ti. Here I like to increase it in increments of 500 until you find a instability point, but you might want to do different increments here. Anyways, the 5070 Ti managed to get to an extra 2 gigahertz on the memory, which is kind of a crazy overclock. Now let's switch over to the core. Here I've added an extra 200 megahertz to the core to begin with, and this allowed us to get to 3 gigahertz on the GB203, I believe it's called. Anyways, that's quite good, but I think we can get it further. I like to increase in increments of plus 50 until I find an instability point, and on this GPU it is 500. It doesn't want to budge any further past that. This will result in just crashing, and we just crash to the desktop. There we can just pull back the clocks ever so slightly and yeah, it will work again. In Unigine Heaven, I managed to get away with 450, but in games that was causing crashing, so I dialed it back to 400, and here it's absolutely rock solid stable. But how much performance does this actually net us? In order to find out, I've tested the stock gaming VBIOS on the MSI Gaming Trio OC Plus. It's kind of a long GPU name. Anyways, our overclock profile is plus 400 on the core and plus 2000 on the memory. All testing has been done in our 285K system, which has 128 gigs of RAM, and the rest of the specs will be linked in the description down below. And our resolution of choice is 1440p, as that's what we've, well, got with our monitor. And the latest NVIDIA Game Ready driver has been used at the time of testing, which is version I cannot remember, so it'll be down there. And resizable bar has been enabled. So let's get into the benchmarks, eh? First game up is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. This is not the most particularly great example of PC ports, but we do gain some slightly more better performance, if that makes sense. We've got 99 FPS on average with the overclock, but the 1% load does go down to 61 from 65, so that's not particularly great. But to be honest, Star Wars Jedi Survivor is known for its very poor 1% load performance, so that's got to be known, I suppose. Anyways, the overclock is not really worth it because you are gaining average frame rate, but you're losing frame time while doing so, so it doesn't really make sense here. It's not looking much better in Cyberpunk 2077 because we lose some average frame rate going down to 105 from 107. It's not like you're really going to notice that, especially as the frame times are staying exactly the same at 71 across the board. So is it worth it in Cyberpunk? I'm not too sure here, but to be fair, this will depend on your GPU and your scenario. But finally, we see an improvement in God of War Ragnarok, where we went up with both our averages and 1% lows, which is great. But to be honest, an increase of 7 FPS when you get in this base frame rate doesn't really mean it's going to be noticeable. And then the 1% lows do go up by like 3 FPS, so technically it is a smoother and better experience. However, I don't really feel like you're going to notice this difference in actual gameplay. Kingdom Come Deliverance, however, is probably the biggest improvement today. Yes, the average frame rate doesn't really budge all too much, but the 1% lows certainly do. They go up by 10 FPS, and maybe this might be recognizable or feelable while you're gaming, because an increase here does mean that the game is going to be running much smoother, and I'll take that any day of the week. One thing to note though, Kingdom Come Deliverance was like the only game where we wasn't CPU bound, so that is something you might need to note there. Cyberpunk 2077 with the RT Ultra preset now does see an increase to the average frame rate. We go up from 56 to 60, which is, well, great news. It's not the biggest performance leap ever, but 4 FPS at this sort of base level of frame rate is, well, I'd say a fair improvement, and we're getting 60 FPS now compared to below it before. The 1% lows don't budge here, they stay exactly the same, but in all fairness, I'd take the 60 FPS one over the stock 56 one, if that makes sense. So overall, there isn't an absolutely huge performance increase with an overclocked graphics card. Now, I do admit this is a fairly small sample size, as I was kind of time constrained while making this video, and there is a big elephant in the room here. At 1440p with a 285K, we found ourselves to be pretty CPU bound in a lot of these games. To be honest, I don't think this is really down to the CPU, it's more so the 5070 Ti getting an absolute bucket ton of frame rate at 1440p, even with like ultra settings. So if you were playing at 4K, or if you were just more GPU bound on your configuration, I suspect you'll see a lot more performance here, like we did in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. So in 2025, is graphics card overclocking actually worth your time? Well, it kind of depends on your scenario. If you're already GPU bound, I would say it's 100% at least trying to tinker with the settings. It's absolutely non-destructive, you won't damage your graphics card because you're not actually forcing more voltage into it, so there's like no risk of you actually damaging it per se. Because as you've seen in this video, if you get a dodgy overclock, you just get some instability, the game might crash and your driver might reset, and then you can just go straight back into Afterburner and then just reduce some of the clocks, and you should be able to get pretty stable from there. Also, a quick tip to ensure 100% stability with your graphics card: run some of your favorite games, and if they're absolutely stable, then yeah, you're overclock stable, because after all, the games that you play or want to play are the ones that actually matter. But just make sure there's a bit of variety in the games, like different engines and the ways they might leverage your graphics card, for instance, just to get a really good gauge of your stability. And then of course you've got the silicon lottery. Some graphics cards might be able to overclock better than others, and that's just down to luck of the draw. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it once you get your graphics card. But if you're already CPU bound, I don't think you're going to be seeing much of an improvement from overclocking your graphics card like we saw in today's video. Here, I'd rather just undervolt your GPU, as you'll get much better efficiency levels, and that goes to cooling and, well, just general system efficiency as well. So I suspect that might be a better option for you if that's the case. But if you want to see how the 5070 Ti gets on in a variety of games at 2 different resolutions, you can check out in a video up here. With that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.